The radio crackled to life as Officer Maria Santos navigated through the suburban streets of Phoenix, Arizona, her patrol car cutting through the late afternoon heat. Unit 47, we have a domestic disturbance at 1247 Maple Street. Neighbors report screaming and possible violence. Respond code 2. In the passenger seat, Rex, her German Shepherd partner of 3 years, lifted his head from his resting position, ears alert as if he understood every word. "What do you think, boy? Another false alarm?" Maria asked, glancing at her canine companion. Rex's dark eyes met hers in the rearview mirror, his expression serious and focused. He had an uncanny ability to sense when calls would be routine and when they'd turn into something more complex. Today, something in his posture told her this wouldn't be ordinary. As they turned onto Maple Street, Maria surveyed the quiet neighborhood. Manicured lawns stretched out like green carpets. White picket fences bordered neat driveways, and children's bicycles lay abandoned on sidewalks, the picture of American suburban tranquility. It was the kind of place where neighbors knew each other's names and looked out for one another's children, which made the domestic disturbance call even more unusual. House 1247 sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, a modest 2-story colonial with blue shutters and a wraparound porch. From the outside, it looked exactly like every other house on the block. No broken windows, no obvious signs of struggle, no police tape or emergency vehicles. The lawn was recently mowed, and a small garden of sunflowers bloomed cheerfully beside the front steps. Maria pulled into the driveway, noting that the only car present was a silver Honda Civic with a child's car seat in the back. She'd learned over her 8 years on the force to observe. Everything details that seemed insignificant often proved crucial later. Rex was already on his feet, his nose pressed against the window, taking in scents she couldn't detect. "Stay close, partner," she murmured, clipping Rex's leash to his harness. As they approached the front door, she noticed the curtains twitch slightly in the front window. Someone was watching them. Before she could knock, the door opened. Mrs. Henderson appeared, and Maria immediately catalogued the woman's appearance. Mid-30s, shoulder-length brown hair that looked hastily combed, wearing a floral sundress with what appeared to be a small stain on the hem. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed her hair, and her smile seemed forced, not reaching her eyes. "Officer, what can I do for you?" Mrs. Henderson's voice was pitched slightly higher than normal, the kind of artificial cheerfulness people used when they were nervous or hiding something. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Officer Santos, and this is Rex. We received a call about a disturbance at this address. Is everything all right here?" "Oh, that." Mrs. Henderson waved her hand dismissively, but Maria noticed the gesture was too quick, too casual. "I'm so sorry about that. I was watching a movie. You know how loud action films can be. The neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, has excellent hearing for her age, maybe too excellent." She laughed, but it sounded hollow. Behind Mrs. Henderson's legs, a small figure appeared. The little girl couldn't have been more than 3 years old, with curly blonde hair and bright blue eyes that seemed far too serious for her age. She peeked around her mother's dress, studying both Maria and Rex with the intense curiosity that only small children possessed. "And who's this little one?" Maria asked, crouching down to the child's eye level. In her experience, children often revealed more than adults intended, their honesty unfiltered by adult concerns about consequences. "This is Emma," Mrs. Henderson said, her hand instinctively moving to rest on her daughter's shoulder. The gesture appeared protective, but Maria noticed how tightly the woman gripped the small shoulder. "Say hello to the nice police officer, sweetie." But Emma remained silent, her thumb finding its way to her mouth, a behavior that suggested stress or regression in a child her age. According to the neighbors Maria had spoken to before approaching the house, Emma was typically a chatterbox who greeted everyone with enthusiasm. Mrs. Peterson next door had described her as the friendliest little thing, always waving and calling out hello from the yard. Rex had been observing the interaction quietly, but now he took a step forward, his nose twitching as he caught scent of something. His ears pivoted forward, and Maria recognized the subtle shift in his posture. It wasn't his drug detection alert, nor his aggression stance, but something else entirely, a mixture of curiosity and concern that she'd seen when he encountered injured animals. "Everything's fine, officer," Mrs. Henderson repeated, her voice becoming more insistent. "Just a misunderstanding. You know how neighbors can be, especially Mrs. Peterson. She calls about everything loud music, cars parked too close to her driveway, teenagers walking through the neighborhood." Maria nodded politely, but her trained eye continued taking inventory. Emma's toys were visible through the front door, and their placement struck her as odd. Usually, a 3-year-old's toys were scattered throughout living areas in the chaotic pattern of active play. Instead, Emma's dolls, blocks, and stuffed animals were pushed against one wall, as if they'd been hastily moved out of the way. "Mind if I come in for just a moment?" Maria asked. "Standard procedure for these calls. Just want to make sure everyone's safe and sound." Mrs. Henderson's grip tightened visibly on Emma's shoulder, and the little girl winced slightly. "Oh, that's really not necessary. As you can see, we're both fine. Emma's just tired. It's almost her nap time." But as she spoke, Rex began displaying behavior that Maria had learned to trust implicitly. His nose was working overtime, and he kept glancing toward the interior of the house, specifically toward what appeared to be a hallway leading deeper into the home. Something had caught his attention, something his sensitive canine senses were picking up that remained invisible to human perception. Emma, meanwhile, had been watching Rex with the fascination children typically showed toward animals. Suddenly, she tugged on her mother's dress and whispered something so quietly that Maria couldn't make out the words. Mrs. Henderson's reaction was immediate and sharp. "She, Emma, not now." The harshness in her voice was unmistakable, and it caused Emma's eyes to well up with tears. Rex, sensitive to the emotional undercurrents around him, whined softly and took another step forward, as if wanting to comfort the distressed child. Maria's instincts, honed by years of police work and reinforced by Rex's unusual behavior, were screaming that this was far from the routine call it appeared to be. The question was, what exactly were they walking into? "I really do insist on taking a quick look inside," Officer Santos said firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument. Years of experience had taught her that the more someone protested about a routine welfare check, the more likely there was something to hide. "It'll just take a few minutes, and then we can all get back to our day." Mrs. Henderson's face went through a series of micro-expressions: fear, resignation, and finally forced compliance. "Of course, officer. I'm sorry. I haven't had my coffee yet, and Emma's been fussy all morning." She stepped aside, opening the door wider, but Maria noticed how her eyes darted nervously toward the interior of the house. As they crossed the threshold, Rex immediately became more animated. His nose went to work, sweeping the air in systematic patterns that Maria recognized from their training sessions. The German Shepherd's tail, usually relaxed during routine calls, was held at alert position, not aggressive, but definitely engaged with something his human partner couldn't perceive. The living room appeared normal at first glance. A beige sectional sofa faced a wall-mounted television. Family photos dotted the mantelpiece above a decorative fireplace, and children's books were neatly stacked on a coffee table. But Maria's trained eye quickly spotted the anomalies that confirmed her suspicions. Emma's toys weren't just pushed against one wall. They were arranged with an adult's precision, not a child's natural chaos. Building blocks were stacked in perfect towers, Dolls sat in an unnaturally straight line, and a toy kitchen set was positioned as if it hadn't been played with in days. For a 3-year-old's play area, it was suspiciously organized. "Beautiful home," Maria commented, watching Mrs. Henderson's reaction carefully. "How long have you lived here?" "About 2 years now," Mrs. Henderson replied, wringing her hands. "We moved here after Emma's father and I. Well, after the divorce. It's been just the two of us mostly, though I have been seeing someone recently." The way she said recently suggested it had been longer than she wanted to admit. Maria made a mental note to ask about the boyfriend. Later domestic situations often involved multiple adults with complex relationships that weren't immediately apparent. Rex had moved deeper into the living room, his attention focused on a hallway that led toward what appeared to be the kitchen and presumably stairs to upper floors. His ears were pricked forward, rotating slightly like satellite dishes, trying to pick up a distant signal. Every few seconds, he would glance back at Maria with an expression that clearly said, "There's something here you need to investigate." Emma had followed them into the living room, but stayed close to the wall, as far from the hallway as possible. She watched Rex with obvious fascination. Her earlier tears dried, but her thumb still firmly planted in her mouth. When Rex looked in her direction, she would smile shyly around her thumb. But when her mother spoke, she would immediately look down at her feet. "Emma, why don't you show the nice officer your drawings?" Mrs. Henderson suggested, her voice artificially bright. "She's very artistic for her age." But Emma shook her head vigorously, pointing toward Rex instead. "Doggy," she whispered, the first word she'd spoken clearly since they arrived. "Yes, that's Rex," Maria said, crouching down to Emma's level again. "He's a very special dog. He helps police officers like me keep people safe. Would you like to pet him?" Emma nodded eagerly, taking a tentative step forward. But before she could reach Rex, Mrs. Henderson quickly intervened. "Emma, sweetie, we shouldn't bother the officers. Dog while he's working." The interruption seemed unnecessary and overly protective. Police dogs were trained to interact safely with children during community visits, and Rex's body language showed no signs of stress or concern about Emma's approach. In fact, he seemed drawn to the little girl, his usual professional demeanor softening whenever he looked at her. "It's actually fine," Maria assured Mrs. Henderson. "Rex is very gentle with children, and it might help Emma feel more comfortable." But Mrs. Henderson had already stepped between Emma and Rex, her protective gesture bordering on frantic. "No, really, I'd prefer if she didn't. She's been having nightmares lately about big dogs." This explanation didn't match Emma's obvious fascination with Rex, but Maria decided not to press the issue immediately. Instead, she continued her casual observation of the house, noting other details that seemed off. The kitchen, visible through an archway, was pristine too. Pristine for a home with a toddler. No finger smudges on the refrigerator, no scattered cereal on the counters, no sippy cups or small plates in the dish drainer. Either Mrs. Henderson was an obsessive cleaner, or Emma wasn't spending much time in the kitchen. "Lovely kitchen," Maria commented, moving toward the archway. "Emma must enjoy helping you cook." "Oh, she's not really interested in cooking yet," Mrs. Henderson said quickly, positioning herself to block Maria's view into the kitchen. "Too young, you know. Safety concerns." Rex had followed them toward the kitchen area, and his behavior became even more pronounced. He was definitely picking up on something, a scent, a sound, something that had him on alert. His nose worked. Over time, and he kept glancing toward what appeared to be a door at the far end of the hallway. "Is that the basement?" Maria asked casually, nodding toward the door. Mrs. Henderson's reaction was immediate and telling. Her face went pale, and she actually took a step backward. "Yes, but there's nothing down there. Just storage, old furniture, that sort of thing." very dusty and dark. The more Mrs. Henderson talked, the more suspicious her explanations became. Every answer felt rehearsed, as if she'd been preparing for exactly these questions. But preparing for what, exactly? Emma, meanwhile, had been following the conversation with the intense attention that children showed when adults were discussing something they found important. When her mother mentioned the basement, Emma's eyes grew wide, and she took several steps backward until she was pressed against the living room wall again. "Mommy," Emma whispered, tugging on her mother's dress again. "Can I tell the doggy?" "No, Emma." Mrs. Henderson's voice was sharp enough to make everyone freeze. The harsh tone was so unexpected and so out of proportion to whatever Emma had been about to say that it created an uncomfortable silence in the room. Rex immediately responded to the emotional shift, moving closer to Emma with the protective instinct that made him an excellent police dog. He positioned himself between the little girl and her clearly agitated mother, not aggressively, but in a way that suggested he sensed Emma might need protection. Emma looked up at Rex with tears in her eyes, and in that moment, Maria saw something pass between the child and the dog, a recognition, an understanding that transcended species. Rex whined softly, a sound Maria had rarely heard from him during professional calls. "I think," Maria said carefully, her hand moving instinctively toward her radio, "I'd like to call for a backup officer to assist with this welfare check." Mrs. Henderson's composure finally cracked completely. "Officer, please, I can explain everything. It's complicated, and Emma doesn't understand." But before she could finish her explanation, Emma broke free from her position against the wall and ran directly to Rex, throwing her tiny arms around his neck with desperate urgency. "The bad man hurt the puppies," she whispered into Rex's fur, her voice so quiet that Maria almost missed the words. "Can you make him stop?" The room fell into stunned silence as the implications of Emma's words sank in. Rex went completely still, every muscle in his body tensed with sudden understanding. Mrs. Henderson's face went white as a sheet, and Maria felt her pulse quicken as she realized this call was about to become something much bigger than a simple domestic disturbance. Whatever was happening in this house, a 3-year-old had just provided the first real clue, and her police dog partner was about to help her uncover the truth. The silence that followed Emma's whispered confession felt like a physical weight in the room. Officer Santos found herself holding her breath, watching as the little girl clung to Rex with a desperation that spoke of weeks, maybe months, of suppressed fear and confusion. The German shepherd had gone completely still, his professional training warring with his instinct to comfort the distressed child in his arms. Mrs. Henderson stood frozen for a heartbeat, her face cycling through expressions of horror, panic, and resignation. Then, as if a dam had burst, she lunged forward toward Emma. "Emma, no! You don't understand what you're saying. You're confused, sweetie. There are no." But Rex smoothly positioned himself between mother and child, not aggressively, but with the quiet authority that came from years of police training. His message was clear. The child was under his protection now. Emma looked up from where she'd buried her face in Rex's thick fur, her blue eyes bright with unshed tears. "But Mommy, the puppies cry at night. They sound like when I had the tummy bug and couldn't eat." Her small voice carried the matter-of-fact honesty that only children possessed, unaware that her words were dismantling her mother's carefully constructed facade. "Puppies?" Officer Santos asked gently, kneeling down to Emma's eye level while keeping one hand on her radio. "Emma, can you tell me where you hear these puppies?" The little girl pointed a small finger toward the basement door at the end of the hallway. "Down there where the bad man goes. He doesn't like it when I try to give them crackers from my lunch." Mrs. Henderson's legs seemed to give out, and she collapsed into the nearest chair, her head falling into her hands. "Oh God, Emma, you promised." "Mommy, you wouldn't tell anyone. You promised." "But the doggy is nice," Emma said, patting Rex's head with the gentle reverence children reserved for beloved pets. "And police doggies help people, right? Mrs. Peterson told me they catch bad guys." Officer Santos felt her heart rate spike as pieces of a much larger puzzle began falling into place. This wasn't about a domestic dispute or even child endangerment. This was about something that required her to call in specialized units immediately. "Mrs. Henderson," she said, her voice taking on the official tone that meant the informal part of this visit was over. "I need you to sit right there and not move while I make some calls. Emma, sweetheart, you're being very brave, and Rex is very proud of you." Emma beamed at the praise, her small hands still tangled in Rex's fur. "Can Rex see the puppies too? Maybe he can tell them it's going to be okay." "We're going to do everything we can to help them," Santos promised, stepping away to key her radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47. I need backup, animal control, and a supervisor at 1247 Maple Street immediately. Possible animal abuse situation. Potential illegal breeding operation." As she spoke, Rex remained with Emma, his protective instincts fully engaged. The dog's behavior had completely shifted from his usual professional alertness to something more personal. He seemed to understand that this small human had been carrying a terrible burden alone, and his canine empathy was responding to her need for protection. Mrs. Henderson looked up from her hands. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. "Officer, you have to understand. I tried to stop him. I tried to help those poor animals, but Derek said if I interfered or told anyone, he'd..." She glanced at Emma and lowered her voice to a whisper. "He said he'd hurt her." "What was I supposed to do? Derek is your boyfriend?" Santos asked, pulling out her notebook. "For about 8 months now. He moved in here 3 months ago, said he needed a place to store some inventory for his pet supply business." Mrs. Henderson's voice was hollow with defeat. "I didn't know what he really meant. I thought he was talking about dog food and toys." Emma had been listening to the conversation with the intense focus children showed when adults discussed important things. Now she tugged on Officer Santos' uniform sleeve. "The bad man Derek doesn't let me go downstairs anymore. But I used to." Sneak crackers to the puppy with the hurt leg. She looked like she was really hungry. The casual way Emma mentioned an injured animal made Santos' stomach clench. Whatever was happening in that basement was serious enough to warrant immediate intervention. "Emma, you are the bravest little girl I've ever met," Santos told her sincerely. "Rex thinks so too, don't you, Rex?" Rex responded with a gentle wag of his tail and a soft whine, pressing closer to Emma in a way that made it clear he'd appointed himself her guardian for the duration of this crisis. Mrs. Henderson was crying openly now. "I've been trying to figure out how to get us both out of here safely. Eric has friends who... They're not good people, officer. He said if I ever caused problems for his business, they'd make sure Emma and I disappeared." "Where is Derek now?" Santos asked, her hand instinctively moving toward her service weapon. "He left this morning with a van full of puppies. He said he had deliveries to make." Mrs. Henderson's voice broke on the word deliveries. "Officer, some of those dogs looked so sick. I begged him to take them to a vet, but he just laughed and said they were inventory, not pets." Emma had been growing increasingly agitated as her mother spoke about Derek. Now she pressed closer to Rex, her small voice barely above a whisper. "He yells at the puppies when they cry, and when the mommy dogs won't eat, he kicks their cages." The matter-of-fact way Emma described the abuse hit Santos like a physical blow. This child had been witnessing systematic animal cruelty for months, unable to understand why the adults in her life weren't stopping it. In the distance, Santos could hear the sound of approaching sirens. Her backup was close, which meant they could properly secure the scene and begin the investigation that Emma's brave words had set in motion. "Emma," Santos said, crouching down one more time, "I need you to know that none of this is your fault. You did the right thing by telling us about the puppies. Rex and I are going to make sure they get help, okay?" Emma nodded solemnly, then looked up at Rex with absolute trust. "Will you tell the puppies that the little girl tried to help them?" Rex seemed to understand the question, responding with a gentle lick to Emma's cheek that made her giggle for the first time since they'd arrived. As the first backup unit pulled into the driveway, Santos realized she was witnessing something extraordinary. A 3-year-old's innocent compassion and a police dog's protective instincts had combined to expose what would likely turn out to be a significant criminal operation. But more than that, Emma's courage to speak for those who couldn't speak for themselves had just changed everything. Within 20 minutes, 1247 Maple Street had transformed from a quiet suburban home into a crime scene buzzing with activity. 3 patrol cars lined the driveway. An animal control van sat parked on the street, and Sergeant Williams, a 20-year veteran with graying temples, was coordinating with the district attorney's office to expedite a search warrant. Emma sat on the living room couch, her small legs swinging as she colored in a book that Officer Martinez had brought from her patrol car. Rex lay beside her, his massive head resting near her feet, serving as both protector and emotional support. Every few minutes, Emma would reach down to pat his fur, whispering things like, "The nice people are going to help the puppies now," in a voice full of hope. Mrs. Henderson sat across from them, wrapped in a blanket despite the Arizona heat, giving her statement to Detective Sarah Chun. Her voice was hoarse from crying as she detailed the progression of the high. Derek's operation from what he'd claimed was a legitimate pet supply business to the nightmare it had become. He started small, Mrs. Henderson explained, her hands shaking as she accepted a cup of coffee from Officer Martinez. Just a few dogs in the basement, claiming they were rescues he was rehabilitating. "I thought it was sweet a man who cared about animals. But then more dogs kept arriving, and they never seemed to leave for their new homes like he promised." Officer Santos stood near the basement door with Sergeant Williams, both of them waiting for the warrant, while studying the heavy deadbolt lock that had been installed on what should have been a simple interior door. The lock was industrial grade, designed to keep something in rather than keep intruders out. "The warrant should be here within the hour," Williams said, his expression grim. "But based on the child's testimony and the suspicious circumstances, we're probably looking at a significant operation." Emma's voice piped up from the couch. "Officer Santos? Will Rex come with us when we move to the new house?" The adults exchanged glances. In her innocence, Emma had revealed another layer of the situation. Mrs. Henderson had been planning to flee with her daughter, probably the only escape plan she could conceive that would keep Emma safe from Derek's threats. "We're going to make sure you and your mommy are safe," Santos assured her. "And Rex will visit you whenever you want." Emma beamed, then her expression grew serious. "What about the puppy with the hurt leg? She's been down there the longest. Derek said she was too old to have babies anymore, so she was just taking up space." Detective Chun looked up from her notepad, her expression hardening. "Breeding operations that kept animals past their reproductive usefulness often led to neglect or worse." Emma's casual mention of the injured dog suggested they were dealing with someone who viewed animals as disposable inventory. Rex suddenly lifted his head, his ears pricked forward. Through the basement door came a sound so faint that only his sensitive hearing could detect it, a soft whimpering that confirmed everything Emma had been telling them. "There," Emma said, pointing toward the door. "That's the sound I hear at night. Sometimes it goes on for hours." Santos felt her jaw clench. The thought of this small child lying in bed, Listening to the sounds of suffering animals she was powerless to help filled her with a cold anger that she rarely allowed herself to feel on duty. "The warrant's here," Officer Martinez called from the front door, holding up an official document. Judge Morrison expedited it based on the child welfare and animal cruelty concerns. Sergeant Williams nodded grimly. "Santos, take Rex and do a preliminary sweep. Animal control is standing by, and we've got paramedics on standby in case we need veterinary emergency response." Emma jumped up from the couch, her coloring book forgotten. "Can I come too? I want to tell the puppies that help is here." "Sweetie, the grown-ups need to go first to make sure it's safe," Detective Chan explained gently. "But as soon as we can, you'll be able to see that all the puppies are getting help." Mrs. Henderson pulled Emma close. "You've done so much to help already, baby. Let the police officers do their job now." Santos approached the basement door, Rex at her side. The German Shepherd was in full professional mode now, his body language alert and focused. As she turned the deadbolt, a smell that escaped made her stomach turn ammonia. Decay and the unmistakable odor of too many animals, kept in too small a space without adequate care. The wooden stairs creaked under their weight as they descended into the basement. Santos had prepared herself for what they might find, but the reality was worse than her worst expectations. The basement had been converted into a maze of wire cages, stacked 2 and 3 high along every wall. In the dim light from a few bare bulbs, she could see dozens of dogs, some barely puppies, others clearly adult breeding animals. Many sat in their own waste, and the water bowls she could see were either empty or filled with green algae. Rex moved systematically through the space, his training kicking in as he assessed each animal. Some of the dogs cowered at their approach too, traumatized to hope for kindness. Others pressed against their cage doors, desperate for human contact and the promise of rescue. In the far corner, Santos found the dog Emma had described, an older golden retriever mix with a badly swollen front leg, lying on her side in a cage barely large enough for her body. The dog's eyes were dull with pain and resignation, but when she saw Rex, she lifted her head slightly, as if recognizing a fellow canine who might understand her suffering. "Jesus," Santos whispered, keying her radio. "Sergeant, we need the veterinary emergency team down here immediately. We've got approximately 40 to 50 animals in various states of distress, multiple medical emergencies apparent." Rex had positioned himself near the injured golden retriever's cage, whining softly in what appeared to be an attempt to comfort her. The sight of the professional police dog trying to console the suffering animal nearly broke Santa's composure. "Animal control, we need every available transport crate," she continued into our radio. "And contact the Humane Society. This is going to require a massive coordinated response." As they waited for the rescue teams to descend into the basement, Santos knelt beside Rex, both of them looking at the golden retriever who had become the symbol of Emma's courage. The little girl had been trying to save this dog with crackers from her lunch, not understanding the magnitude of the cruelty she was witnessing, but knowing instinctively that it was wrong. "Emma's going to be so happy to know you're safe now," Santos told the injured dog softly. "A very brave little girl made sure we found you." The golden retriever's tail gave the faintest wag, the first sign of hope in what had probably been months of suffering. Above them, Santos could hear Emma's excited voice asking her mother when they could see the puppies. Soon, Santos thought, soon Emma would see that her courage to speak up had saved every single life in this basement. The basement had become a carefully orchestrated rescue operation. Dr. Amanda Foster, the emergency veterinarian, worked alongside 3 technicians from the animal hospital, moving from cage to cage with practiced efficiency while animal control. Officers documented each animal's condition with photographs and medical assessments. "This golden retriever needs immediate surgery," Dr. Foster called out. Examining the dog, Emma had tried to help with crackers. "The leg fracture is at least 2 weeks old, maybe more. It's a miracle she survived this long without proper medical attention." Officer Santos watched from the stairs as the rescue unfolded, her radio crackling with updates from units searching for Derek Kowalski. Unit 23 to command. Suspect vehicle spotted heading east on Interstate 17. Arizona plates, David Frank 7492. In pursuit. Above them, Emma's voice drifted down to the basement door. "Mommy, can I draw pictures for the puppies? Mrs. Peterson taught me how to draw hearts, and hearts mean love." The innocence in her voice created a stark contrast to the horror being uncovered just below her feet. Rex had appointed himself as the liaison between the rescue operation and Emma's emotional well-being, periodically climbing the stairs to check on her before returning to assist the veterinary team. "Santos," Sergeant Williams called from across the basement, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You need to see this." She made her way through the maze of cages to where Williams stood beside a makeshift office area the Derek had set up in the basement corner. A folding table held ledgers, cash receipts, and what appeared to be a detailed breeding schedule written on a whiteboard. The numbers told a horrifying story of efficiency and profit over animal welfare. "Look at these records," Williams said, pointing to an open ledger. "He's been selling puppies for anywhere from $800 to $2,000 each, depending on the breed. But look at the expense column, virtually nothing for veterinary care, minimal food costs. Pure profit built on animal suffering." The breeding schedule on the whiteboard was even more disturbing. Female dogs were listed by number rather than any identifying characteristic, with notations about their productivity cycles and retirement dates. The golden retriever Emma had tried to help was listed as female number 23. Production ceased, disposal pending. "Disposal," Sanctus repeated, her voice flat with disgust. "He was planning to kill her." "Gets worse," Williams said, opening a manila folder. "These are correspondence with buyers. Some of these puppies were being sold to families with small children. No health screenings, no vaccinations, no guarantee these animals weren't carrying diseases or genetic defects from inbreeding." Dr. Foster's voice carried across the basement. "I need another emergency transport. This beagle mother has severe mastitis, and her puppies are severely malnourished. We're talking days, maybe hours before we lose them." The urgency in her voice spurred the animal control team into faster action. Cage after cage was being loaded onto wheeled carts, each containing animals that represented months of suffering that could have been prevented if someone had spoken up sooner. Rex approached Santos, his nose touching her hand in the gentle way he did when he sensed her emotional distress. The German Shepherd had been working steadily alongside the rescue team, his calm presence helping to keep the traumatized animals from panicking as they were moved from their cages. "You know what the worst part is?" Santos said to Rex, scratching behind his ears. "Emma's been trying to save them for months." A 3-year-old had more courage than any of the adults who must have suspected something was wrong. As if summoned by her words, Emma's face appeared at the top of the basement stairs. She had convinced her mother to let her peek down, and her blue eyes were wide with wonder as she took in the rescue operation. "Officer Santos, there are so many puppies," Emma called down, her voice filled with amazement rather than horror. At her age, she saw rescue and help arriving rather than understanding the full extent of what the animals had endured. "Yes, sweetheart," Santos called back. "And thanks to you, every single one of them is going to get help now." Emma bounced excitedly. "Can I tell them they're going to be okay? I promised the puppy with the hurt leg that help would come." Dr. Foster looked up from where she was examining a litter of puppies that couldn't have been more than 4 weeks old. "Actually, she said with a smile. "I think that would be wonderful." Animals respond to gentle voices, especially children's voices. With her mother's permission, Emma carefully descended the stairs, her small hand gripping the railing. Rex immediately positioned himself beside her, his protective instincts in full gear as she entered the chaotic rescue scene. "Hi, puppies," Emma said in her sweet, clear voice. "I'm Emma, and I tried to bring you crackers, remember? These nice people are doctors for doggies, and they're going to make all your OEs better." The effect of her voice on the animals was immediate and profound. Dogs that had been cowering in fear lifted their heads. Several tails began tentative wagging, and the constant whimpering that had filled the basement quieted to soft, hopeful sounds. Emma walked directly to the golden retriever's cage, now open as Dr. Foster prepared her for transport. "Hi, hurt leg puppy. I told you the police doggy would help. His name is Rex, and he's very brave, just like you." The golden retriever, despite her pain and weakness, lifted her head and managed to lick Emma's small hand through the cage bars. It was a moment of pure connection that brought tears to the eyes of every adult present. "Dr. Foster," Emma said with the serious tone children used when they had important information to share. Her name should be Hope, because she hoped every day that someone would help her, and now someone did. Dr. Foster nodded solemnly. "Hope is a perfect name, and Hope is going to be just fine, thanks to you speaking up for her." The radio crackled with an update that sent satisfaction through the room. "Command, this is Unit 23. Suspect is in custody. Recovered 17 additional puppies from the van, all appearing to be in poor condition. Suspect Derek Kowalski is being transported to county lockup." Santos felt a weight lift from her shoulders. With Derek in custody, Emma and her mother were safe, and the immediate threat was over. But more importantly, Emma's courage had not only saved the animals, it had dismantled an entire criminal operation that had been causing suffering for months. "Emma," Santos said, kneeling beside the little girl, "you are the bravest person I know. You saved all these animals because you cared enough to speak up when you saw something wrong." Emma beamed, then looked thoughtfully at Rex. "Can Rex visit Hope when she gets better? I think they're going to be friends." As if understanding every word, Rex moved to the golden retriever's transport crate and gently touched his nose to hers through the bars. Promise between animals that better days were coming. 3 days after the rescue, 1247 Maple Street buzzed with a different kind of activity. News vans lined the usually quiet suburban street, their satellite dishes reaching toward the Arizona sky like mechanical sunflowers. Reporters from local stations and even national networks had descended on the neighborhood after word spread about the 3-year-old who had blown the whistle on one of the largest puppy mill operations in state history. Inside the house, Emma sat at her small art table, completely oblivious to the media circus outside. She was carefully coloring a picture of a police dog surrounded by happy puppies, her tongue poking out in concentration as she selected the perfect shade of brown for Rex's fur. "Emma, sweetheart," Mrs. Henderson called from the kitchen, where she was preparing lunch while fielding calls from reporters, lawyers, and victim advocates. "Channel 7 News wants to know if you'd like to talk about helping the puppies." Emma looked up from her coloring, crayon still in hand. "Can Rex be in the TV story too? And Hope? People should know that Hope is getting better." Mrs. Henderson smiled, the first genuine smile Officer Santos had seen from her since this whole ordeal began. 3 days of intensive counseling with victim advocates and child psychologists had helped both mother and daughter begin processing their trauma. Emma seemed remarkably resilient for someone who had lived through months of fear. The phone rang again, and Mrs. Henderson checked the caller ID. "It's Dr. Foster," she told Emma, putting the call on speaker. "She has news about Hope." "Hi, Emma." Dr. Foster's warm voice filled the kitchen. I have some wonderful news. Hope's surgery went perfectly, and she's walking on her repaired leg. But the best part is that she keeps looking around like she's searching for someone. I think she's looking for you. Emma jumped up from her chair, nearly knocking over her juice box. Can we visit her today? I want to tell her about the picture I drew for her new house. Actually, Dr. Foster continued, that's why I'm calling. Hope is going to need a very special home with people who understand what she's been through. The Humane Society usually handles adoptions, but in this case, they've made an exception. If your mom agrees, Hope would like to come live with you. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Emma's eyes grew wide as she looked back and forth between her mother and the phone, as if she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. Mrs. Henderson had tears in her eyes. Dr. Foster, are you sure? After everything we've been through, Emma and I were still figuring out our new normal. That's exactly why Hope would be perfect for your family, Dr. Foster explained. She's been through trauma too, and she trusts Emma in a way she doesn't trust most adults. Sometimes healing happens best when survivors help each other. Emma was practically vibrating with excitement. Mommy, Hope was my first friend who needed help. Please, can she live with us? I promise I'll take really good care of her. Before Mrs. Henderson could answer, there was a knock at the front door. Through the window, they could see Officer Santos and Rex waiting on the porch, both of them wearing what appeared to be their dress uniforms. Officer Santos. Emma ran to the door, flinging it open. Did you hear? Hope wants to live with us. And I finished the picture of you and Rex saving all the puppies. Santos smiled, kneeling down to Emma's eye level. I did hear, and I think that's wonderful news. Rex and I actually came by because we have something special to show you. She handed Emma an official-looking certificate with gold lettering and an embossed seal. This is a certificate of heroism from the Phoenix Police Department. It's for civilians who show extraordinary courage in helping solve crimes. You're the youngest person ever to receive one. Emma studied the certificate carefully, running her small finger over the raised seal. Does this mean I helped Rex do his job? You did more than help, Santos said seriously. You saved 47 animals because you were brave enough to. Speak up when you saw something wrong. That makes you a hero, Emma. Rex stepped forward and sat formally beside Santos, his posture perfect and professional. Around his neck was a new collar with a small medallion attached. Rex has something. For you too, Santos explained, unclipping the medallion. This is his way of saying thank you. It's a junior canine officer badge. It means you're part of our team now. Emma's face lit up with such pure joy that it took the adult's breath away. She carefully pinned the badge to her shirt, right next to a small button that read, "Animals are friends," that the Humane Society had given her. Am I really a police officer now? She asked, standing up straighter. You're a junior officer, Santos clarified, which means your job is to keep being brave and speaking up when you see animals or people who need help. The afternoon progressed, with Emma giving her first and only interview to Channel 7 News, sitting in her backyard with Rex, beside her and her junior canine officer badge prominently displayed. She spoke with the unfiltered honesty that only children possessed. The puppies were sad, and I knew the police doggy could help them, she explained to the reporter. My mommy was scared of the bad man, but Rex isn't scared of anything. So I told him about the hurt puppies, and he made sure they got better. When asked what she wanted other children to know, Emma thought carefully before answering. If you see animals or people being hurt, you should tell a grown-up you trust. And if the first grown-up can't help, tell another one. Keep telling until someone listens. Her words were broadcast that evening across Arizona and picked up by national networks. Within hours, the Phoenix Police Department was flooded with calls from other children reporting suspected animal abuse in their neighborhoods. Emma's courage had inspired an entire generation of young advocates. That evening, as the news crews finally packed up and left Maple Street, Emma sat on her front porch with Rex, both of them wearing their official badges. Mrs. Henderson watched from the doorway, marveling at how her traumatized, silent little girl had transformed into a confident advocate for those who couldn't speak for themselves. "Rex," Emma said seriously, scratching behind his ears, "tomorrow when Hope comes home, can you teach her how to be brave like us?" Rex's tail wagged once, as if sealing a promise between partners who understood that real courage meant speaking up for those who needed help most. 6 weeks after the rescue operation, the Phoenix Police Department's K-9 training facility had gained an unusual visitor. Every Tuesday afternoon, a small figure in pigtails and a junior K-9 officer badge could be found sitting cross-legged in the training yard, surrounded by police dogs of various breeds who seemed magnetically drawn to her presence. Emma had become something of a legend among the K-9 unit. Her weekly visits, initially arranged as follow-up therapy sessions, had evolved into an informal position as the department's youngest animal welfare consultant. Today, she sat beside Officer Martinez as they watched Rex demonstrate search and rescue techniques to a group of new recruits. "See how Rex uses his nose to find the hidden toy?" Emma explained to the rookie officers with the serious tone of someone who took her educational responsibilities very seriously. "He told me that dogs can smell things from really, really far away. That's how he knew about the puppies in the basement, even before I told him." The officers exchanged amused glances, but they listened respectfully. In the weeks since Emma's story had gone national, the Phoenix PD had received dozens of animal cruelty tips from children who cited Emma and Rex as their inspiration for speaking up. Her impact on community policing had been undeniable. Hope, now fully recovered from her leg surgery, lay contentedly at Emma's feet. The golden retriever had adapted to family life with remarkable resilience, though she still showed signs of her traumatic past. Loud noises made her flinch, and she preferred to sleep where she could see all the exits to her room. But with Emma, she was completely relaxed, often serving as the little girl's living pillow during story time. "Emma," Officer Martinez said, checking her watch, "your mom will be here soon to pick you up. Should we go see how the new puppies are doing?" Emma's face lit up. The department had recently taken in 3 puppies from another cruelty case, one that had been solved because an 8-year-old boy had remembered Emma's television interview and reported his neighbor's suspicious activities to his school counselor. They walked across the training facility to the rehabilitation area, where Dr. Foster was conducting the final health evaluations on the 3 rescued puppies. These dogs, unlike the animals from Derek's operation, had been caught early enough to avoid serious physical damage, though they still showed signs of neglect and fear. "Hi, Dr. Foster," Emma called out, skipping ahead with Hope trotting beside her. "How are our new friends doing?" Dr. Foster smiled, setting down her clipboard. "Much better, thanks to the special treatment plan you suggested. Tell me again why. You thought they needed extra playtime with the older dogs?" Emma settled onto the grass, and immediately the 3 puppies, a mixed-breed trio that couldn't have been more than 12 weeks old, tumbled over each other to reach her. Hope positioned herself protectively nearby, having appointed herself as Emma's official guardian during these visits. "Because they forgot how to be happy puppies," Emma explained, allowing the smallest of the 3 to climb into her lap. "When puppies are scared all the time, they don't remember how to play. But when they see brave dogs like Rex and Hope having fun, they remember that dogs are supposed to be happy." Her insight wasn't just intuitive, it was backed by consultation with animal behaviorists who had been amazed by the 3-year-old's understanding of trauma recovery in animals. Dr. Foster had started incorporating Emma's observations into the rehabilitation protocols for rescued animals. Speaking of Rex, Officer Martinez said, he wanted to show you something special today. They walked back toward the main training area, where Rex was waiting with a new addition to his equipment, a small vest with junior partner embroidered on the side. This is for when we do school visits together, Officer Santos explained, emerging from the training building. The department has received so many requests for educational presentations about animal welfare that we're starting a formal program. Rex and I would like you to be our co-presenter. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? I can help teach other kids about helping animals? You're already the best teacher we have, Santos said seriously. Last week, that presentation you gave to the third graders at Desert View Elementary resulted in 2 animal cruelty reports. Kids trust you in a way they don't always trust adult officers. The truth was that Emma's natural empathy and direct communication style made her incredibly effective at reaching other children. She spoke their language, understood their perspective, and had real experience to back up her advice about speaking up for those who couldn't speak for themselves. Hope suddenly perked up, her tail wagging as a familiar car pulled into the parking lot. Mrs. Henderson had arrived, and with her was someone Emma hadn't expected to see, Mrs. Peterson, their elderly neighbor who had made the original 911 call that started everything. Mrs. Peterson! Emma ran toward the car, Hope close behind. Did you come to meet Rex? I told him all about how you taught me that police dogs help catch bad guys. Mrs. Peterson, who had to be at least 75 years old, smiled warmly. I certainly did, dear. I've been reading about your adventures in the newspaper, and I wanted to thank your police dog friend personally. She turned to Rex, who sat at attention in his formal greeting posture. Young man, she said with mock seriousness, you did excellent work listening to our Emma. She's been worried about those animals for months, and I'm glad she finally found someone who understood what she was trying to say. Rex's tail wagged once, a sign of acknowledgement that made Emma giggle. Mrs. Peterson has something to tell you, Mrs. Henderson said, her voice carrying a hint of excitement that suggested good news. The city council is planning to name the new animal welfare hotline after you, Mrs. Peterson announced. The Emma and Rex emergency line for children to report animal abuse. And they want you and Rex to be at the ribbon-cutting ceremony next month. Emma looked up at Rex, her small hand resting on his head. Did you hear that, Rex? We're going to help kids save animals all over the city. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the training facility, Emma sat surrounded by the dogs who had become her extended family. Rex, her professional partner, Hope, her constant companion, and the 3 recovering puppies who represented the ongoing mission they shared. Officer Santos watched the scene with satisfaction. What had started as a routine domestic call had evolved into something much larger, a partnership that was changing how the community approached animal welfare, one child at a time. You know what the best part is? Emma said, looking around at all the dogs. Now when animals are in trouble, they have lots of friends to help them, and no one has to be scared alone anymore. Rex pressed closer to Emma's side, and Hope settled protectively at her feet, while the puppies curled up between them. It was a perfect picture of healing, hope, and the unbreakable bonds formed when courage meets compassion. 1 year later, Sunrise Elementary School's kindergarten classroom buzzed with the excited energy that came with the first day of show and tell. 25 5-year-olds sat crisscross on the rainbow carpet, their eyes fixed on Emma Henderson. As she stood confidently at the front of the room, a framed photograph clutched in her small hands. This is my best friend Rex, Emma announced, holding up the picture that showed her and the German Shepherd both wearing their official badges. He's a police dog, and together we save animals who can't save themselves. Her teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, smiled from her position near the classroom door. She had heard Emma's story from the principal before school started, but witnessing the 4-year-old's poise and confidence firsthand was remarkable. This was a child who had found her voice and her purpose at an extraordinarily young age. Rex taught me that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared, Emma continued, her voice clear and steady. It means you do the right thing even when your tummy feels funny and you want to hide under your blanket. A small boy named Tyler raised his hand tentatively. Did the bad man hurt the puppies really bad? Emma's expression grew serious. The way it always did when she talked about the animals she had helped rescue. Some of them were very sick and scared. But now they all have families who love them and give them medicine when they need it and toys to play with. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small album filled with photos. These are pictures of all the dogs from that day. This one is Hope, she lives with me and my mommy now. And this is Rusty. And this is Bella. And this is Max ... As Emma flipped through the pages, showing photos of healthy, happy dogs in their new homes, the classroom fell silent with the kind of attention that children rarely gave to anything for more than 30 seconds. The most important thing, Emma said, closing the album carefully, is that if you ever see an animal or a person being hurt, you should tell a grown-up you trust. And if that grown-up can't help, you tell another one. You keep telling until someone listens and helps. Ms. Rodriguez felt her throat tighten with emotion. In her 15 years of teaching, she had never heard a kindergartner articulate such a powerful message with such clarity and conviction. Does anyone have questions for Emma? She asked. Hands shot up around the circle. Can we meet, Rex? Do you still talk to the puppies? Are you going to be a police officer when you grow up? Emma answered each question thoughtfully, her responses revealing the depth of her ongoing involvement with animal welfare advocacy. She talked about her monthly visits to the police station, her work with Dr. Foster in evaluating rescued animals, and her role in the new Children's Animal Welfare Hotline that had helped save over 200 animals in the past year. As show and tell concluded, and the children moved to their next activity, Ms. Rodriguez approached Emma. That was wonderful, Emma. Your story is very important. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Officer Santos says that every time I tell people about Rex and the puppies, more animals get help. So I like to tell the story lots of times. The truth was that Emma's story had taken on a life of its own. The Emma and Rex Emergency Line had become a model program that was being implemented in cities across the country. Child advocacy organizations had documented a significant increase in reports of suspected abuse, both animal and human, in communities where Emma's story had been shared. At lunchtime, Emma sat with her new classmates, pulling out a lunch that Mrs. Henderson had packed with extra care. Alongside her sandwich and apple slices was a small bag of dog treats, habit that had started during those desperate days when she tried to help the basement puppies with crackers from her own lunch. Why do you have dog treats? Asked Sarah, a girl with pigtails who sat across from Emma. For when I visit Rex after school today, Emma explained, and for Hope when I get home. She likes the ones that taste like bacon, but they have to be the healthy kind that Dr. Foster says are good for her joints. You visit a police dog after school? Another classmate asked, his eyes wide with admiration. Emma nodded matter-of-factly. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we practice for our school visits, and I help Rex train new police dogs how to be gentle with kids who are scared. What Emma didn't mention was that her sessions with Rex had evolved far beyond their original purpose. She had become an integral part of the K-9 Unit's community outreach program, and her insights into childhood trauma and animal behavior had been incorporated into training protocols for officers across the state. After school, Mrs. Henderson picked Emma up in their new car, a reliable sedan that had replaced the old Honda, purchased with money from the victim's compensation fund, and Mrs. Henderson's new job at the animal hospital, where she had found purpose helping Dr. Foster care for rescued animals. "How was show and tell, sweetheart?" Mrs. Henderson asked as Emma buckled her seatbelt. "Good. Tommy said his daddy has a farm, and sometimes animals get hurt there, and he's going to ask his daddy to call Dr. Foster if it happens again. And Sarah wants to meet Rex, so maybe she can come with us on Thursday." Mrs. Henderson smiled, marveling at how naturally her daughter had grown into her role as an advocate and educator. Therapy had helped them both process their trauma, but it was Emma's sense of purpose, her mission to help other vulnerable creatures, that had truly healed them both. They arrived at the police station just as Rex was finishing his afternoon training session. The German Shepherd's tail began wagging the moment he spotted Emma through the chain-link fence, and he trotted over with the eager enthusiasm he reserved specifically for his junior partner. "Hi, Rex," Emma called, running toward the fence. "I told my whole class about you today, and I showed them the pictures of all our friends in their new homes." Rex pressed his nose through the fence to touch Emma's outstretched hand, and Hope, who had accompanied them on the visit, positioned herself beside Emma in what had become their familiar formation, a trio united by shared experience and mutual devotion. Officer Santos emerged from the training building, carrying a folder thick with correspondence. "Emma, you won't believe this. We got a letter from a little girl in Colorado who saw your story on the news. She helped police find 15 dogs that were being kept in terrible conditions, and she says she was brave because she remembered what you said about speaking up." Emma's face lit up with the pure joy that came from knowing her courage had inspired others to find their own. "Can we write her back? I want to tell her that she's a hero too." As the afternoon sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Emma sat on a bench outside the police station with Rex beside her and Hope at her feet, carefully composing a letter to a child she'd never met, but whose courage connected them across hundreds of miles. "Dear Colorado friend," she dictated as Mrs. Henderson wrote, "you were very brave to help those puppies. Rex says that brave kids like us have to stick together because animals need lots of friends to keep them safe." In that moment, surrounded by the animals and people who had become her extended family, Emma embodied the profound truth that had emerged from her story, that courage is contagious. Compassion has no age limit, and sometimes the smallest voices can create the biggest changes. The little girl who had once whispered desperately to a police dog about her puppies had found her roar, and she was using it to make sure no creature would suffer in silence again.